She thought she could destroy my family's 120-year-old orchard with copper nails and midnight demolition. But she had no idea that one protected building would cost her nearly $500,000. Some stories begin with love, others with loss. This one begins with both. And a peach orchard that had weathered more than a century of seasons, storms, and generations of hands that knew how to nurture something beautiful. My great-grandparents planted those trees when the world was a different place, when neighborhoods were built on handshakes and shared harvests. For 120 years, those peach trees had been the beating heart of our family's legacy. Their blossoms announcing spring, their fruit bringing the community together each summer in celebration. Every harvest season, we'd throw parties that became the stuff of local legend. Friends, neighbors, strangers who'd heard about our peaches. Everyone was welcome. There'd be music drifting through the branches, the sweet scent of peach cobbler cooling on windowsills, and laughter that lasted long into the evening. Those parties weren't just about fruit. They were about connection, tradition, and the kind of community that seems to be disappearing from the world. Our neighbors to the south were particularly special to us. Sam was an old-school craftsman who could make magic happen with nothing but hand tools and patience. He taught me the art of woodworking in his 180-year-old workshop, a timber-framed building that had stood since before the Civil War. We'd spend evenings in that sacred space, the smell of wood shavings mixing with good whiskey, his weathered hands guiding mine as we brought furniture to life. In return for his friendship and wisdom, Sam received the finest peaches our orchard could offer: fresh fruit, homemade preserves, and my grandmother's secret recipe peach liqueur that could make a grown man weep with joy. Then cancer stole Sam away from us, and his heartbroken wife followed him into whatever comes next. They'd never had children, so their property went to the state, except for Sam's tools and whiskey collection, which he'd gifted to me just weeks before he passed. Those tools weren't just implements, they were a connection to a man who'd taught me that some things in life are worth taking time to do right. That's when she arrived. Karen, and yes, that was actually her name, complete with the haircut, the attitude, and an entitlement that seemed to radiate from her very pores. She bought Sam's property and immediately began what could only be described as a hostile takeover of our peaceful neighborhood. Before she'd even moved in completely, she was making rounds to every surrounding property with a list of demands. When she finally graced us with her presence, she informed us, not asked, informed, that we needed to remove half of our orchard because the leaves were blowing onto her property. We explained, as politely as possible, that the orchard wasn't just landscaping. It was our family's living history. These trees had weathered 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and countless storms. They weren't going anywhere. Her eyes flashed with the kind of rage that comes from someone who's never been told no in her adult life. But she retreated. For now. What followed was 3 years of psychological warfare that would have impressed military strategists. She got our neighbor's beloved Bernese mountain dog, a gentle giant who wouldn't hurt a butterfly, put down by fabricating an attack on her child. The truth came out later, but too late to save that sweet soul. She systematically destroyed our annual peach parties through a campaign of harassment that would make paranoid dictators proud. Every celebration brought police cars, fire marshals, and federal agents responding to her creative complaints. Noise violations for afternoon music. Arson charges for our traditional bonfire in our designated fire pit. She even called the ATF, claiming we were running an illegal distillery, despite my father's legitimate license to distill for personal consumption. After 3 years of watching officers interrupt our family traditions, we surrendered. The parties that had brought joy to our community for generations simply ended. But ending our celebrations wasn't enough for her. She wanted the orchard itself gone. When we refused to destroy our family's legacy, the real war began. Truck tires slashed in the night. Eggs splattered across our farmhouse like some twisted Halloween prank. Our cat disappeared for days, returning with injuries that suggested someone had tried to cut off his tail. We couldn't prove it was her, but everyone knew. Then came the night that changed everything. She hired a company to conduct what can only be described as a covert military operation. They demolished Sam's historic workshop under cover of darkness, erasing 180 years of history in a single night. 2 days later, Construction began on her new garage and recreational center, built exactly where that piece of living history had stood. But she'd made one critical error in her haste to destroy the past. She'd forgotten to ask permission from anyone. Soon after, something sinister began happening to our trees. The ones closest to her property started dying. Leaves turning brown in the height of summer, branches withering as if poisoned. We lost 4 trees before we discovered the cause. Someone had been driving long copper nails into their trunks, slowly murdering them from the inside. We set up trail cameras, perfectly legal on our own property, and caught her red-handed, hammer in hand, driving death into our living heritage. When my father confronted her, she offered a hollow apology. Dad, being the genuinely good man he is, wanted to let it go. But I couldn't. The nail she'd driven into our oldest tree, the patriarch of our orchard, became the final nail in her own coffin. I began investigating with the methodical patience Sam had taught me in his workshop. Through friends in the county administration, I uncovered a web of violations that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. She'd never applied for permission to demolish the protected workshop. She'd never gotten approval to build her new structure. But here's where it gets beautiful. The old property markers had shifted over time, and her new building wasn't just illegal. It was sitting 3 feet onto our property. When I presented my findings to my parents, they were initially reluctant to escalate. They'd grown up in a world where neighbors worked things out over coffee and handshakes. But when I reminded them of everything she'd done, the murdered dog, the poisoned trees, the destroyed traditions, they understood that some people only respond to consequences. So we called in the authorities. First came the historical preservation officers. Turns out Sam's workshop wasn't just protected due to its age. It was a registered historical landmark that had played a crucial role in a Civil War-era conflict. Demolishing it wasn't just vandalism. It was destroying American history. Then came the building inspectors, armed with violation notices that read like a prosecutor's dream. Illegal demolition, unpermitted construction, code violations, building on someone else's property without permission. The legal avalanche was swift and merciless. The fine for destroying a historical landmark, $150,000. The cost to demolish her illegal structure, $50,000. Additional fines for the illegal construction, $83,000. But here's where justice became poetry. She was ordered to rebuild Sam's workshop at her own expense, and it had to be period correct down to the smallest detail. Every timber cut by hand, every joint crafted with tools from the era, every dimension matching the original plans. Hiring master craftsmen to build a large timber frame structure using only hand tools. Well, let's just say it's not cheap. Another $154,000. Total cost, $437,000, plus legal fees that could choke a horse. The woman who'd tried to destroy a century of family tradition was financially destroyed herself. Bankruptcy forced her to sell the property, which my parents purchased, finally reuniting Sam's land with our orchard where it belonged. Last I heard, she'd retreated to the anonymity of city life, where neighbors don't know each other's names and no one cares if you poison trees or destroy history. Sometimes justice isn't about revenge, it's about restoration. Today, Sam's workshop stands again, built with the same love and craftsmanship that created it 180 years ago. Our orchard thrives, its oldest trees bearing witness to the truth that some things are worth fighting for. And every harvest season, we throw parties again. Because some traditions are too beautiful to let bullies destroy. The peaches have never tasted sweeter.